We can go ahead and get started. And I see Carla has joined us. Glad you could join us, Carla.
Yes, ma'am. Hello. How are you? Hi, everyone.
Okay, Carla, you're on mute if you wanted, if you were saying something.
Am I on mute now?
Carla, good. How are you?
Okay, great.
Okay, glad to see you.
Good to see
All
you
right, we'll go
all.
ahead and
Thanks.
get started. And yeah, good to see you. So Dr. Harden is gonna start us off with the introduction, the discussion about the book. So Dr. Harden.
Hi, good morning. Oh, no, it's afternoon. Okay. Hi, everyone. So, um, I got my first COVID vaccine this morning, uh, but I had to drive way out to Sun City to get it. So, driving all the way over there and back, all I could think of is the inequity of the distribution and how, why are there not locations in the inner city, right? So that's Miss Lucas Wilson's next op-ed, okay? She's not paying attention to me. But anyway, thank you for joining our book club. Oh, yes, she heard me. Okay, thank you for joining our book club. And I think most of you on know how awesome Princess Lucas Wilson is and her wealth of knowledge and experience as a policy writer for the state and working at ASU as a faculty member. Our belief is that advocacy and activism has lots of different um, methods. And so, like this discussion, our discussion, we feel, does helps move forward the initiative of equality and justice. For those of you that, just a little bit quick introduction to the Maricopa County branch of the NAACP, we just like to emphasize that there are 3 different branches around the area, and we like to be sure that you that people are aware of that, because a lot of people just lump us all together and just say NACP, but we are the Maricopa County branch, and we've been around, this branch has been around for over 100 years. So welcome, and I turn it over to our 3rd vice president, who is a member of our executive committee, and hello to everyone, and thank you for being here. Miss
Okay, thank you,
Lucas
Dr.
Wilson.
Harden. And um, yes, in terms of choosing this particular book, you might think, why are we focusing on girls? And we know there's a lot of information about what happens to our boys. But when I was working with another community organization many, many years ago, I thought that girls needed more attention in terms of some of their challenges. So we ended up giving a conference for girls, and we had it at one of the community colleges. And at the time, my background is I'm a social worker by profession. I've been a practitioner, manager, administrator, executive director, et cetera. But I had worked with girls who had challenges and lots of trauma. And so I wanted to do something for girls in the community that didn't necessarily have that background. So when we had this conference, it was composed of community advocates, some educators in high ed, and people with other types of backgrounds. We were just shocked at the challenges these young women had. And so that piqued my interest long ago. So the conference was successful. For the girls, they felt like that was the first time, one of the first times. They had a conference just for them, and our goal was to listen to them and learn about their experiences. So that was one of the reasons I thought that this book would be important for educators, parents, community advocates to be aware of and to read. Now, for this particular book discussion, you know, if you read the book, that's great. If you didn't read the book, that's great too. You know, there's plenty that we can discuss just from our experiences as parents or as advocates in other organizations. And I see Judy Green has joined us. So hello, Judy. So welcome.
Hi, how are you? I was muted, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so nice to see you. So welcome. Okay, so when we, when we're in classrooms or, we're around girls that may act out or have certain behaviors, one of the popular questions that are that's being put forth now is, instead of asking what's wrong with you, we need to ask what happened to you, and take the time to listen. And so we know with girls with a lot of trauma, you may not get an answer immediately, but we need to keep that in mind as a question rather than to go into labeling and punishment, etc. And in her book, Dr. Morris addresses stereotypes. And in terms of stereotypes in African American girls are all of our girls, no matter what race you are as a society, they are our girls. And so sometimes, because of the stereotypes about being bad girls or loud or aggressive, or you express any kind of emotion, you get a label. And in classrooms and other settings, the labels can be very negative and not even accurate. So, it's normal to speak up and maybe raise your voice if you are angry. That's a regular emotion. Maybe you have a good reason to be angry, and need not turn into a total label, to label you something. So these stereotypes, according to the book, leads to exclusionary discipline, where girls are expelled from school. The stereotypes can also lead to school to confinement pathways. And what we mean by confinement, for those of you who read the book and just kind of sharing general information, confinement can be detention, group homes. Sometimes girls are sent out of state to group homes due to their behavioral issues. Also, the stereotypes can lead to low expectations. And in the book, there were a few stories about young women asking questions in classrooms, especially in classrooms that are in detention facilities. And them asking questions, wanting to learn, was seen more as aggression or acting out. And they were expelled from the classroom. There's also distortions about what being feminine is. And the zero tolerance policies have caused harsher treatment. We have the school resource officers sometimes coming in when, problem could have been resolved another way. You have police officers arresting children. And there's a story that I had heard of before where they handcuffed a 6-year-old little girl for having a tantrum. Recently, they've shown some footage on the news where a 9-year-old is being arrested and put in a patrol car and really handled roughly. And one of the officers tells her, "You're acting like a child," because of course they're handling her in an aggressive manner. She's trying to get away. And she says, "I am a child." So that's another one of the distortions about our Black girls. They're seen as older than they really are. And I know some of you may have seen on the news, I think it was over the summer, where this officer threw a young girl on the ground in a bathing suit and put his knee in her back. That's another example. So there's many examples that happen that we don't see. So some of these stereotypes are the reasons for those things, and can be the answer to why are our Black girls treated differently. Now the book starts off with sharing a story about Maya Angelou. We all know that she's an icon of poetry and the arts. And you know, if you've read, most of us have read, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, that you know, she was traumatized early in her life, raped, and her uncles tracked down the perpetrator and killed him. So she thought her voice could kill. So she was psychologically mute for many years. Now, if she had gone into a classroom where she was seen as being uncooperative, defiant, or maybe getting some other kind of label because she wouldn't speak, you could have imagined some of the outcomes that would have happened for her. She would have been expelled. And schools are protective environments, you know, especially for girls who have difficulty outside of the classroom. They're protective environments. They can really be key in helping girls cope with what's going on. It helps to monitor their situation to try to keep them safe. And just in my own practice, briefly, I had a 6-year-old little girl that was given away by her mother, who had no remorse. And the little girl happened to be biracial. And her mother said she didn't want her because she was Black. And the little girl was 6 years old at the time when her mother gave her away in her face, you know, and the little girl just sobbed, and it was very heartbreaking, one of the cruelest things I've ever seen. And so when she first got her psychological testing, she was seen as being cognitively disabled or intellectually disabled. And at the time, I knew that wasn't the case. So anyway, make a long story short, kept working with her, put her with a teacher that I knew, and she just eventually blossomed. I still get postcards from her. So now she's married with a family, grew up to be a social worker, but she could have easily gone the way some of the girls in this book have gone, because she was very, very, very traumatized. So when we look at other considerations, we know that there's transgenerational trauma, you know, based on our history with slavery, Jim Crow, and some of the situations our parents had to go through, some of our siblings, some of us have gone through, and that's always present. And you know, we learn from our homes and our families how to inoculate ourselves against racialized oppression when we go out into the world. Not everybody has that, but we have these things going on all the time. We know that race, class, and gender, those are other considerations. And class can be a big issue in terms of how girls are viewed. Girls who are from neighborhoods with high poverty, sometimes we hear the term ghetto, she's ghetto, you know, and what that means, and the pictures that people have about that. And then there's structural inequities, and of course, implicit bias, this unconscious bias people say they have. And I saw something interesting this morning on one of the news shows where it's a pastor, he's using an AA model to address racism in this multicultural church. And I don't know if any of you saw it, but it's structured just like an AA meeting. People go, "Hi, I'm Patty." Hi, Pressy. I just saw you. Welcome. you know, they go, hi, I'm Patty, I'm a racist. It's conducted just like an AA meeting. And he's been doing it for 6 years. He has a lot of people participating. So that's another new model to me that's out there about implicit bias. So they have meetings just like AA meetings. So I thought that was very interesting. And we know that mass incarceration, there's a lot about that in the news. There's many books written about it, and that causes a lot of trauma. And sometimes what people kind of don't think about is when the mom's arrested, that causes even more trauma for some families. And ASU, they've started to have an annual conference entitled, well, the focus is children of incarcerated parents. And they have children also being a part, you know, older children being a part of the panels and whatnot, and describe, you know, what that experience is like. So your parent gets arrested, you go to school, you know, maybe you act out, maybe you zone out, you know, you could have a lot of different issues. And that can also get you on, you know, a path to, you know, being misunderstood and put in one of these, put on one of these paths to incarceration. And we know in some neighborhoods, there's an underground economy, and we know that laws are not applied equally. So for some, you know, if you sell marijuana, you know, you can get arrested and get lots, you know, lots of time. I know some of that's changing. But in some neighborhoods, people do what they have to do to feed their families. And sometimes, you know, it's seen as illegal, but the sentencing is not equal. And another part that is discussed in the book regarding a girl's experiences is the human trafficking piece. And when you read the stories about some of those girls, it is very enlightening in terms of how they see themselves, how they see their prospects. So I wanted to do kind of that brief overview in case you haven't had a chance to read the book yet, because it doesn't matter whether you've read it or not. So there's just a couple of questions I'd like to share with you to frame our discussion. And you know, I'll read them to you, and then you might want to write them down, or I can also put them in the chat. So the first question is, how has the information, you know, that we've shared so far about what's in the book, how is that applied to your professional life, or as a parent, or you know, the relative of a young woman, or as a community advocate? So how has this information applied when we think about our girls? And the second question is, which positive solutions stood out for you, either from the book or in your own experiences? I know some of you are educators, some of you have daughters, you know, some of you are community advocates. So what solutions have you run across, or ones you've thought about that could help our girls and help to support them? So those two questions. Okay, do I need to put the questions in the chat?
No, I wrote mine down.
I can get a response.
No.
No. Okay. All right. So let's, okay, thank you. So let's start with the first question. How has this information applied to your professional life when you think about our girls? So whoever would like to share.
I was going to start with the second question. So somebody else take the first one, and then I've got something for the second one. This Clarissa. Somebody had the first one. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when it talks about applying, I have nieces. I have a son. I didn't have any daughters. but I've been close to my nieces, and I've seen the need to be supportive of them, to be nurturing, to also to keep track of what they're doing, the activities they're involved in, and those things. Even be supportive of the parents. They have good parents, but they still need that village approach. And I find that in the book, a lot of these girls did not have a village to support them. Where the parents lacked in parenting skills, the girls continued some of the same mores that they've seen with their own female counterparts, like their mothers or their older sisters or girls in the neighborhood. And they also, what was actually valued was also misconstrued as far as it had to be with your accessories, what you look like, what you had. There was no sense of how to make goals and long-term planning. And those are things we can instill in our young ladies. Even you're like in our sorority, like I know AK has a sorority where they do things with young girls. Deltas have a program where you work with young ladies. And there are other organizations that do things with young ladies as well as with young men. And those things are primarily geared as far as getting into confidence, getting into self identity, getting into goal setting, also looking at immediate goal targets, and also long range goal targets. And I found that these girls did not have those skills. They were not equipped with those skills. But I do know we can save our girls, even we save them girl by girl. And I know for me personally, working with my nieces, and I see the progress that they're making and see how they are doing as young ladies, that gives me hope. And like you don't have to be blood relatives. You can take in other girls that you can nurture as well. And we've done that also as family members to help others that may not be family blood, but also family as far as the village, to help those girls reach their potential.
And to piggyback
Okay.
with Verna, kind of the same thing. I'm still in education, and as a former librarian, as recent as 2005, 2006, it was still part of our curriculum teaching nursery rhymes. And the nursery rhymes, of course, are white European girls. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Our girls are not even represented in nursery rhymes that we teach them, in kindergarten and preschool coming up. Even the literature that they read at 6th grade. I was teaching 6th grade 2 years ago. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Wonderful book. I think it's a Newbery winner, all of that. However, every book with that's dealing with, girls, Black American, African American, doesn't have to be about the struggle. And
Right.
that's a book about the struggle. Can we get some more literature? So I would like to, I try to take it upon myself to find literature that's more appropriate now, that's gonna, uplift, that's gonna help them identify. Everything is not always about the struggle, and not everything is about Mary Had a Little Lamb, which Mary is, blonde with the flowing hair. I would just like to connect girls and boys with literature where they can be represented.
Okay. Okay.
I want to also add, as a mother of a son, and some of you have sons, and I know it is so imperative that we teach our sons how to respect women and respecting themselves and respect not only their mothers, but respect their sisters and their non-sisters and their aunts and their non-aunts, the women that they come in contact with, part of their own community, that we entrench those values in them, that they appreciate and value us as women, and see us as partners instead of adversaries. And that respect is so important that we teach our young men. They always talk about, well, the girls got to be ladies. Well, I think the boys got to be gentlemen. And it's so important that we teach them how to approach our women, how to treat them, how to court them, how to talk to them, how to understand when they have a conversation, that we can teach these young men. That also will help our young girls.
Okay. Wonderful.
Well, for me, I mean, I raised a son and a daughter, and this was many, many years ago. So one of the things for me was making sure that my daughter always had a safe space, that I was open to, that she could talk to me about anything, and know that I would listen, and that there would not be judgment, and that we would talk through any issues that she had. And I think a lot of that is what maybe is missing. I'm not an educator, but many, many years ago, after I had my first son, I took some time off and I did substitute teaching. And this was in the mid 80s. And I was a substitute teacher at a predominantly Black high school in Louisiana. And one of the things I found was the kids just needed somebody to let them know that I'm invested in you and I'm invested in your success. And I was there for a full semester. It was a long-term assignment. So I got to know the kids, I got to know their parents. And what I found was just giving them an opportunity or giving them a safe place to come and talk about anything was very important to them. And so I felt that it not only helped the students, but it also helped the parents. And I think that was critical. So I just, keeping those lines of communication open and always giving people a space where they feel comfortable in coming and talking to you.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, so important. Anyone else on the first question,
Yeah,
Judy?
I'm not an educator, so I read the book more as a point of information, because I just enjoy reading. And I had been to some lectures by the ASU, I think it was the Center for the Study of Race and Democracy, that was it. And they focused a lot on the school to prison pipeline that I know I'd heard about this over and over. So when this book, was suggested, I said, well, I'll read this and learn something about it. My kids are adults, and thank goodness they didn't encounter the juvenile delinquent system. But it's just good to know about what goes on in the community and how these young Black people are not getting served well by the system that we're all paying for.
Right. And, all these are excellent points. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, so we've talked a bit about respect and having different types of literature. And, these are things we have to keep moving forward. And having that safe space is really important for our kids, not only in the elementary grades, but also in college and universities. I know for a bit at ASU, when I served as faculty advisor for the NAACP chapter at ASU, that was a consistent concern by students, Black students, that they did not have a space to meet. Now that might have changed, but even trying to get a space to meet was not supported. It was seen as you're trying to segregate from the rest of the population. So, 1,000 years ago when I was in undergrad at ASU, even at ASU, we had a space. And prior to me attending ASU, there was an actual house called the Black House, and it had all these resources. And I was young enough to miss that opportunity, but they supported students throughout their time there, called the Black House. So, if we can provide those spaces as educators, advocates, parents, of course, and listen. Because I know when we had the conference for the girls years ago, it was a challenge not to try to give advice immediately, just to kind of listen. And especially when it bumps against maybe one of our core values. Because some of the statements in the books about how the girls saw themselves, you want to kind of jump in and say, don't think about yourself like that, before before they have a chance to talk for a while, because you want to make sure they're supported and have the best life. So some of the things sometimes you hear, you inside, you're like, oh my God, oh my God, I hope this doesn't continue. But you have to just kind of to train yourself to listen. So the next question, we've talked a bit about some of the things you all have done in terms of solutions. And when we think more as a community or as advocates, what types of programs come to mind? Do you think might help girls, either within? I know, Pressy, you talked about having more expansive literature that kids can read where they're represented, so that's important. Are there any other types of programs that come to mind for you? I know, Clarissa, you said you had.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to mention, if y'all can, I'm not quite presentable, but hey. One of the things that we're doing at, I'm a faculty at Australia Mountain Community College. One of the things that we are working on is what we call culturally sustainable pedagogy, helping students to see themselves in, the content, so that it's relevant to them, and it grows out of that culturally relevant teaching pedagogy. It came out of high school, so I'm not sure they called it pedagogy, but whatever. Just so the students see themselves, in the curriculum, that it's relevant to them. And so one of the things that we're looking at is, do students even see a connection between, the fact that I'm a Black student or a Hispanic student and, science and math? Why has that always just been for majority communities or Asian communities as opposed to everybody? And so we know that there are famous folks all the way back to, continent of Africa and math. This is not new to us, but you got to go back and get those math and science references and bring them forward in your class and then tie it in. So it's just having the sense of mind or presence of mind to even think about, how can I connect the students to the content in my classes is something at least that we're working on. Another thing that helps, at least on campuses, is data. And so sometimes, and you have to take folks at their word. Sometimes I think the request for data is, I don't have to do anything unless I see the data, right? But I think there's some genuine concern about, help me to substantiate why it is I need to make this change. And so one of the things that has come out recently, and what's really good about it, is it's our campus, because a lot of times you think about, oh, that's happening out there. It's happening somewhere, that Black students are just as likely to pass as they are to fail. I mean, it's just like right down the middle. So what we're looking at is, if you come with the ability, then you're fine. But if you don't come with the ability, you're not going to make it through this process. So we're looking at, providing data that's close to home that allows us to say, we genuinely need to make a change here, because it's a 50-50 toss up if Black students, just in one case, make it through our community college system or not. So data is helpful as well. And then the last thing I want to say is that asking what has happened to you is really powerful and unexpected, because students are not expecting you to even care what has happened to them. So it really opens up sort of a genuine avenue of discussion, and then some discussion about how can I help.
Ms.
Okay.
Princess, the way I interpreted your question was like what are some solutions, right? What are, and y- we all on the call know that the problem is huge. But
Mhm.
if we could just take a little piece of it, like connecting what Clarissa said and Pressy, I hope I'm pronouncing that okay, right? Um, the um, I think it's so critical, the kind of images and the literature that kids have. Well, okay, some of you guys know that I go between counseling and psych when teaching. So, the thing of seeing is believing kind of thing, and dealing with the kids' self-esteem and their core. So I hardly ever would read storybooks to our two children unless they were African American kids. If we had to do coloring books or storybooks, they were usually animal books rather than them looking at storybooks that had um, all white characters, right? So I wanted it to seep into their psychic that their brown skin was beautiful. And so whenever I would travel out of Arizona, whenever I had free time, I would go try to find a black bookstore. And just like I agree with what Pressy said, it doesn't always have to be the uh, oppressive narrative,
struggle.
right? Yeah, it's like, and I was so great. I found this book called Princess Kali and Princess Ava, Prince Kali and Princess Ava, which was like a story, it told like a fairy tale with all black characters and things like that. So I think that's really important. And maybe even if this is something I'm mushing over into stuff. I don't want to talk a lot, Miss Princess. I'm sorry, but what our education committee chair and I have talked about in the NACP is creating activity where we buy children's books and give them out to daycares and places like that have predominantly African American populations, but the books have to be African American books. And that's a project that we're trying to do and kind of will help a little bit. We do what we can, but at least if they started seeing themselves in a positive light, and then they have to have those African American role models, you know, if they see themselves, they believe that they can achieve it. And some of you on the call know that we drove our kids all the way from Tempe to South Phoenix for elementary school every single day because I wanted them to have a black teacher. And if they got sent to the principal's office, which I thought they probably would sometimes, they had to respond to a black authority figure, you know. But so, and one last commercial, and I'll be quiet, Miss Princess. If you know anyone who has a master's in psychology, Chandler Gilbert Community College is hiring right now. And so if you can have them to go up to the Maricopa Community College website, if you know anybody who has a master's in psychology, and fill out the application, because that's part of the piece, right? Our kids get left out K through 12 and K on because they don't have teachers who look like them or care about them. So, yeah.
Mhm.
So, okay, that's anyway. What's our solution? One of them is what can we do to help them with their self-esteem? So, thank you.
Right, right,
Thank you.
right,
Mhm.
right, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I wrote down a
Oh, of
couple,
course, yeah.
after reading the book, I wrote down a couple solutions, and based on what the author was talking about. And one is, one of the students in the book said the school feels like a prison.
Mhm.
Well, if you remove the SROs, I forget what it's called, school resource officers.
Mhm.
If you take the SROs out of the school and instead put a psychologist or put a counselor there,
Mhm.
the kids need support. They don't need someone walking around with guns or with a taser and just, a strict disciplinarian. They need to be nurtured. And, it should be, more of an environment for learning, and not, it shouldn't have that prison feel. And then one statistic someone threw out years ago was about the ratio of counselors in the Phoenix school districts. The student counselor ratio was way off. And when kids are in the middle school, that's very pivotal. That's where they really need to talk to a counselor about career objectives. And if there's no one there to really guide some of these students, our kids, they just fall through the cracks. They don't have anyone to talk to about career objectives. Where's the job market? What should I do? What colleges I go to? Because a lot of times the parents can't. A lot of times the parents aren't college educated, or they're not up on what college is best for this and for this subject matter. And so we definitely need to have a student to counselor ratio that's more in line with what's going on nationally, because it was way off. I forget the numbers, and maybe Dr. Hardin knows, but I mean, I heard the numbers years ago, and it was just horrible. And I bet you every middle school doesn't even have a counselor there.
That's true.
Yeah, excellent points. And when you just mentioned about the school resource officers walking around with guns and tasers, if you're a child or a young person who, you've been triggered in your community or in your home, maybe your dad was tased, or you can imagine the emotional toil that takes on a young person, and to have the ability to manage all of that. I mean, it's really asking too much of children and young people. So going back to some of the earlier comments about, it's important to have people that look like you, kind of understand that you're fully human with all the emotions that other people have. And maybe you're having a bad day, maybe you're upset about something, that you're not inherently a bad girl, that term, bad girls, good girls. Even with some of the behaviors that young women thought they had to do according to the book, you could get that label and all the little acronyms that they used. So, all excellent points. And, we have had to, as people, we've had to improvise and create programs, and we've done that even in slavery. We create what we need, and sometimes it's a huge challenge, but we still do that. And I was just briefly going to mention the STEP program that I worked with Dr. Hardin on at Mesa Community College, which was a program intended to kind of fill some of these gaps, not only for girls, but for our students, some of the things that Clarissa just mentioned. So, depending on, what your particular profession is or where you are, we've written grants and creative programs. We have the GAP program in the Maricopa County NAACP, where Verna volunteers as well, to try to fill some of those gaps, particularly related to self-esteem and having representation. Pressy, you're on mute. Okay.
I said, I'm thinking a little globally.
Okay.
Same thing, and I know we're not responsible for them to come up, but we do need to educate whites or non-blacks. Or let me say people that are not of color. Let me say it that way. Because like I said, I'm thinking at the primary early stages, we're trying to get them to see not just that Black Lives Matter, that this young girl is a girl. She is only 12. I don't care what she looks like, what might be coming out of her mouth. She's still a child. So how can we get books in their communities? It's good that we're reading on our own. We're representing, you know what I mean? So we can learn some identity, build up. But at the same time, just like we read white stories, why can't they read stories with people of color? I don't care if it's Asian or whatever, just something that's outside of their race. I have yet to see a little white girl playing with a black baby doll. I have a girlfriend, she says she's seen many. I have yet to see one white girl carrying around a black baby doll. Now, my nieces, all of them have, Barbies, like I say, with blonde hair, because, that's what's on the commercial. They want that doll that was, that was portrayed on the commercial. I see that. But I have yet to see a black baby doll in their hand. Or like I said, I can't see them quoting or memorizing a nursery rhyme that talks about Keisha. Well, why can't they? Why can't we put some books in their communities, in their libraries?
You can. As a librarian who was a librarian, first African-American librarian in Kyrene, and also was at a predominantly, you might say, white school, I took a conscious effort to increase the cultural representation in the library by the materials I ordered and the resources I used. Also, when they just had our quote Black History Month, I always made sure I had African-Americans represented not only every day on the school calendar through the announcements. I had students of all races reading that information about our people. I didn't care if they were purple, I didn't care what color they were. They had to read that information. And also I brought in people who looked like me who did some of the presentations to classes. So we do have to do the work.
Right.
Sometimes we just have to do the work. And you know what? It was successful. The library excluded it. It made it more an inclusive place where it had something for everyone in that library. And you just have to do the work. It wasn't easy, but you just have to do the work. And you know what? They learned.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is that they don't want to learn. They haven't had the opportunity to learn. And also help people who look like us who did not know their history. But also help those who didn't look like us understood that we had a history before we came to this country.
Right, absolutely. Pressy, to piggyback on one thing that you said, one of the purposes of this book club was to get other races to read these books.
Right.
Dr. Harden and I have been, especially after the George Floyd, asked, what can we do? What can we do? So part of, the presentations that we've done, we say, educate yourself. Read books like this. We've recommended reading lists, and we've invited about 3 white churches to be on this call. So that is very important, what you said, Preston. I think, Dr. Harden, did you have something?
Just kind of, I was gonna say, ask Verna, did she think when she was saying, we have to do it ourselves, right? And just 2 things I would like to ask. Okay, one, do you think our passion to help to collectively, it has our passion waned, right? To go out there and help, some of us that we've gotten ours and we have arrived and we're forgetting to give back. Just an open question. Secondly, because part of that is in different organizations I'm in, when I see we do these book giveaways and different things, Christmas toy drives, Preston, we don't think about go buy black dolls and give them out to whoever you're giving them to. I'm treading, I'm getting out there on a limb, but some of us have forgotten from whence we've come. And we don't think to like buy black toys and give them away. If our organization is going to do a toy drive or whatever, and so, we are getting away from helping ourselves, and then like I was interested in the cultural sustainable pedagogy that Kalisha, you were talking about, because see, that starts in kindergarten, right? Starting it in college, how can we make that happen down in kindergarten? That they're looking at black material, like Pressy said.
I just want to say this. I don't know for all parents, but I know when my son was little, when he was a child, I wouldn't put clothing on him that didn't look like him. If it didn't have, it could have an animal, that was fine, or it could like a dinosaur or something. But I never put colors on him that didn't look like him. He wore no clothes that didn't have, they weren't blonde and they weren't hot red hair. They looked like him. And I think it's so important that you talk about as children, even how we dress our children. And even though you have your nieces, Pressy, you can give them a black doll. You know, and give them, because they make some beautiful black Barbies. They have them all the time, like red dresses and pink dresses and all kind of things. But the bottom line is that we have to force, not force issue, but expose them to the possibilities that we are here. They may not, sometimes they don't know they're here because they're not recognized in the media, recognized in the newspaper, recognized in a magazine, but we can recognize them.
And then even like when they come out with the movie, The Princess and the Frog, right?
Yes.
I'm sorry, you guys, but I
Yes.
hated that movie. It's like, what?
Why the
Princess and
only
the Frog.
African American princess has to be a frog during the
That's what I
entire?
Well,
I couldn't.
He's a frog too.
well, for the longest, all we had was Lion King. So
I
that was
know.
a step up. We're making progress.
Princess was an animal. Oh my Lord.
Yeah, but see, that's the kind of narratives that our
That's
little
what
ones
I'm talking
get.
about.
Yes.
Well,
You also have to expose your kids to Black professionals. And, you know, I made sure when my kids were growing up, they went to a Black dentist. They had a Black doctor. They went to a pediatrician was Black. You know, if they don't see Black people in that light,
That's
you know,
right.
that's a reflection of what they can possibly be down the line. And luckily, we had the good fortune of growing up on an HBCU campus. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was around Black intellectuals my entire life, but you know, I made sure that my kids were certainly exposed as well.
I saw something on, I want to say, I don't know what channel it was, but they were interviewing Tyler Perry. And one of the things that he mentioned is that Aunt Oprah had given his son books to read. He really liked to read. And so Tyler read the books to him. And what it was in a like a wicker basket, a really cool wicker basket. And then there are all these different books in there. And of course, the interviewer was saying, well, which one did, Oprah give him? And he said all of them. But the emphasis, if I got this right, they were all books about Black children or Black people, or that would remind him of his history. And it was in this cool little presentation, like a treasure chest. And that was his book treasure chest, right? And so one of the things that I continually do for my grandchildren is to get them books that are about African Americans. Tay Diggs just did this one, Chocolate Like Me. It's not too bad, but just getting them books and then putting it in their little shelf at their house, but also when they come here in the summer, they have their own little shelf as well with books. And one of them, I put in a little plug here, is the book that Karen and Glasper's daughter, her son, and Glasper's daughter wrote. Good night, sweet. I forget the thing of it.
Wake up, sleepyhead.
Wake up, sleepyhead. That's it. Is one of the ones that's in there. So yeah, definitely the doing the work and making it available for them. But the last thing I'll say is, and it's so great with grandkids, you get to do it again, right? You get try to get it right.
Try to do it right.
Yeah, right. But one of the things we did with our kids is at their school, yes, there was just, if it was going to be Black history, we were going to create it. So one of the things I asked to do was to turn the library into an inventors museum. And so all the different Black inventors, and then an example of what they invented, so the kids could not only read about it, in their little easy language, but also touch it, feel it, and then a picture of the inventor. It was work, but it at least was an opportunity to say, we've done things too, be proud that you're Black and talk about this and be comfortable with it. So anyway.
Great. A lot of great ideas, great information. And gosh, some of the things that you've described, they do take a lot of work, but they're worth it. They're worth it, right? They're worth it. So from our discussion so far, I just wanted to ask one last general question. And it's something that I've kind of wondered about, and there may be some data or research on it. But with the Teach America coming into schools, where white teachers can get their student loans forgiven if they teach in a area that sometimes end up to be predominantly Black. So it has to be an area that's seen as disadvantaged. And I'm wondering about the increased use or placement of SRO.
Uh-oh, you froze.
Princess, I
if
think you're frozen.
the timeline matches when the maybe the labeling increased, so you got the school source officers coming in and police officers.
You keep freezing.
That would be a neat research project,
Yeah.
Princess, to see what's the correlation between when those students, perpetrators started coming into the neighborhood schools. And yeah, that would be that'd be a good project. I need to put in a plug for Miss Verna.
Dr. Harding,
Oh, did I freeze? Did I freeze?
No,
on
you're
my
right.
computer.
Oh,
Okay.
Princess.
The GAP program you were talking about, we were having so much success with it.
Froze
when we-
again, Dr. Harding.
Oh, geez. Okay. When we, yeah, I think I was just saying, did you hear me say like it would be a neat study to see the correlation between what you said is when those Teach for America people started coming into the inner city schools and how much the data changed in terms of security officers coming into the
Yeah,
community. That'd be cool.
yeah. When they started coming in and police officers and all that,
Mhm.
if there's a correlation.
Mhm.
So you're saying the SROs came in after the Teach for America kids came in, you think?
Well, probably because, you got these supposedly intellectual white kids coming into
Right.
inner city schools, and they don't really understand the behaviors of the kids.
Mhm.
So their frame of reference should be so different from
Mhm.
everybody else. So and start labeling them as negative behaviors and things of that nature.
Mhm.
Just wondering how, I think that's what maybe that
Yeah.
was my interpretation
Yeah.
of Ms. Princess's thought, is that how their perception might have skewed the data in terms of negative behaviors of these
Mhm.
kids who they couldn't really relate to them.
Yeah.
So,
They were probably just afraid, they were
Mhm.
afraid of these kids, and some of these kids are big, physically big. And you send these little white kids in there, they have good intentions, but they can't relate to some of this so-called aggressive behavior
Mhm.
that our kids display. So that's a good point. I never thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah, and some of the teachers that are afraid, kids can feel that.
Mhm.
They'll
Mhm.
act up for entertainment.
Mhm.
And so it can get out of hand. Let's
And
see what we can.
kids want
how
us to
we
be
can-
around somebody that looks like them. We need more African American teachers in these predominantly Black areas, and more Latino, because I think the dropout rates would come down because the kids can relate more. So I know my brother used to teach in East Harlem, and he was the only male in the whole school. And I was talking to his principal one day, and she said all the little boy at recess, all the little boys would be hanging on to my brother's pants legs, because these kids, a lot of them come from single parent households. They don't see men. And when they go to school and see a male, they just naturally gravitate. And it's the same thing with racial groups too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, any other thoughts on the school resource officers, police, and Teach America? Anybody else? Okay. All right. You know, we hear cultural competency a lot, and I know that there's probably training and programs within schools that teach cultural competency. And I was a cultural competency trainer for many years when it first came on the scene. And at the time, we were very hopeful in what it could do. Um, but I wanted to get your thoughts on having cultural competency training for teachers. Do you feel that that's enough, maybe for teachers who are not familiar with certain cultures or racial groups, if just having the training is enough? Or um, is there another way to help with accountability in terms of making sure that children and students are treated in a, you know, respectful, humane manner? If that question is clear, is cultural competency enough?
I think, I don't think it's enough, but it's a necessity, right? And there should be courses required in cultural competency before anybody can get their teaching degree, before they can get, and you know, before they get any teaching degree, there have to be courses there. And it's like you said, it's a starting point. You can't teach it. People have to want to be, but it's better than nothing at all. At least they have to look at it. And I'm saying that from the point of view of teaching cultural competency at the graduate level up at Grand Canyon. And these are students who were working on their masters in counseling. And, you know, you could just see it on the faces of some of the students. It's like, you know, and I'm standing up there lecturing and I'm like, why do you even want to go into counseling? Why, you are so narrow-minded. And and I'm being honest with you guys, and I would be saying, I hope you get placed in some kind of lily white upper class agency and you don't have any interaction with people of color, because you could see on their faces who was receiving the information and who really was going to act on the information that they were taking in. But at least those who really were resistant. I used to love teaching up there just because they had to. I thought it made a little bit of a difference because they had to sit through those lectures and look at me. look at me. So there was like a crack, you know, you at least making some kind of crack that it's like, yes, I'm the one who's going to grade you.
Right.
So you might want to pretend like you like this material. And then maybe even if they had to pretend they like the material, then that's a start in what's that, you know, changing their mindsets, dissonance in their concepts.
Yeah,
So
paradigm shift or something.
paradigm shifts. And so maybe they would at least start thinking about it, you know, and saying, oh, maybe some of this material. And I would always say, I would always refer to the authors. You know, I wouldn't want them to try to say, I'm not going to believe her. And I'd say, well, look, in your textbook, it's, you know, so that it would not take the personality out of it. So maybe they would receive it a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I think it's, so to answer to your question, I think it's necessary. They have to have the cultural competency courses and follow it up with trainings and seminars and things like that, you know.
And just to piggyback on what you said a little bit, believe it or not, social workers, people who have big hearts to help people, they resented cultural competence. Not all of them, but I got the same resentment. And I also taught graduate level courses in social work.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's just that same kind of dynamic is there. So I would do similar things like, put on Tim Wise, who is this
Mhm,
white cultural competency person,
mhm,
try to divert, but you get the same kind of resentment. So
mhm.
I'm kind of bringing all this up to say, if in helping professions, uh, teachers, counselors, social workers, if we have people who have challenges, you can imagine, the challenges, in other professions. So it's just kind of everywhere. Because you wouldn't expect that in social work or counseling, and hopefully not teachers. You hope that teachers love all children or whoever they're teaching. But we know that's not always the case.
One of the things that we're working on in this cultural competency space is the continuum, and it's just something I made up, but somebody told me it actually exists out there, so I have to go and find it, I guess. But the continuum that says, where are you in terms of cultural competency? So there's and these terms don't necessarily have to stick, but there's the novice, just learning about it, never really heard about it, novice. Then there's the intermediate person who's saying, oh yeah, this comes up every year. I've been to this workshop, that workshop. Yeah, and I'm sure there's something in my class because I care that's relevant. And then there's the person who has gone through to kind of say, okay, the data says if I remember students' names, that shows that I care they're here. Okay, the data says if my images are appropriate for each racial group, that's important. Okay, the examples I give are, so it's the where are you on the continuum is what we're trying to evaluate at first, and then where do you want to be? Because some are totally fine where they are, and some want to move. And so knowing that will help to come up with what we call the toolbox, where you can go and grab an activity if that's what you want to do, or you want to grab some images that don't have photo or pay or whatever in the middle of it. So to help folks to do more of it, to actually add this stuff to their courses after we do the continuum. So that's at least one of the things we're looking at. But we are allowing folks to be where they are at this point. I don't know if that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but I know what gets paid gets done. And right now it's voluntary. So.
Okay. One of the, I'm glad that that's happening, but one of the theories that we used to have in terms of hooks for people being interested was to personalize the information. That can take a toll on the presenter, but we used to have people identify themselves in terms of their own cultural journey as bicultural, if they're acculturated, if they're, to get the attention, their attention on the topic. And there's all kind of little exercises, probably online, you could do just to help them understand the relevance. See how important your culture is to you, so, with transferring that to students, maybe it's a good idea if you try to, work your way along the continuum. I mean, just to try to get their interest, because if you're not mostly a person of color, you don't have to navigate all of that. It's like, you can't even relate to it. You're like, it's like, why are they complaining? Whatever, so that's one of the theories that we used to teach and adhere to. Yeah.
Okay, let me interrupt real quick. I'm so sorry, but I have to be off campus by 4 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to say goodbye, and please include me in the next one.
Okay.
I'll wait for your email for the next book title. Okay.
All right.
Bye,
Thank
Pressy.
All right.
Yeah,
Bye, ladies.
Pressy's on our criminal justice law enforcement committee.
Right. Pressy, are you on our listserv? Do you get all of our announcements from the NACP?
I'm not sure. I do get announcements, so probably.
Yeah.
That tells you all about our events. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, she
Okay,
gets
good.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye, ladies.
great.
along with Carla Boatner. She's on our
Cool.
criminal justice law enforcement committee. And this book is related to criminal justice law enforcement. Want to acknowledge them. So thank you, Pressy.
And Miss Princess, Miss Carla, Thank you very much. I'm supposed to be, facilitating a 3:30 session as well, so I'm kind of a little bit late going to that other one.
Yeah.
So,
We're
but this
getting,
was great.
yeah,
I didn't want to leave this.
we're getting ready to wrap up.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave it. Thank you so much, okay? Thanks so much.
We're getting
I'm gonna-
ready to wrap up though.
Okay, I'm gonna join that other meeting that I'm supposed to be on.
All right,
Okay?
thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. So I wanted you all to know that we're about to wrap up, so you would know that. Okay. All right, are there any other comments? Those of you who have read the book, did you like the book? Was it,
So
I
full
said-
disclosure, I have the book. I have not finished it, but I did start reading it and I will finish it. And I want to thank you, Princess, for reaching out to me and saying, okay, are you going to join? Because I wasn't, because I hadn't read the book, but I'm glad I did. And I just like to add, you know, I'm not an educator. I have not, but this has been a very interesting conversation. I spent many, many years in the public sector, in working for a municipal government and for the county government. And one of the things that we really focused on was continuing education. And one of the things that there were certain topics that were mandatory for us to do on an annual basis. For example, ethics training. We had to have ethics training annually. Customer service training was a training that we had to have on an annual basis. So just listening to you talking about cultural competencies to me, that's something that's a continuing education type thing and should be done on an annual basis because things change. Things are constantly changing. And so I think it's critical for people to continue to have those conversations and to get, hear current data and current information with regard to what is going on in the world. So I don't know, for me, I think continuing education is critical.
right. I agree with you.
Yeah,
Okay.
one thing I took away from the book, because I like her, I'm not an educator either, but I was shocked about how the kids in juvenile detention are so poorly educated and poorly thought of. I mean, this is not a throwaway generation. Everybody has potential. It's just up to the teacher and to the system to bring that potential out of a person. And these kids have been abused, a lot of them, they've been beaten up, they have low self-esteem. It could be asking a lot of a teacher to help with all the psychosocial issues, but sometimes just showing that somebody cares and is invested within them. Make them feel like a human being and don't degrade them and put them down for asking questions in the classroom. That was horrible.
Yeah.
I can't remember which student it was, but it was at the end of the book when the author asked, what could she do? And then her response was to tell the truth.
Yeah, she said.
And I think we always need to tell the truth about our children, about our communities, about how they're being affected by what's being done to them, both positively and negatively, but we must always tell the truth. And also be truthful with the students. Kids don't want to be lied to.
Mm-hmm.
And honesty will go a long way. But when she said tell the truth, that means tell their stories. So hopefully this story will help some other student not have to deal with that kind of experience.
Right.
But I told Prince this was a hard book. I said it was a good book,
Yeah.
but it was tough because there were so many case studies in this book. And you kept saying, is it going to get better? So when I got to chapter 5, I said, oh, resolution. But then the resolution was hard. So I said, okay, but it was a necessary book and it's an important book. I told this kind of book you would take in a course.
Yeah, and they do have workshops
Mhm.
based on this book. Yeah, so yeah, it could definitely be a course.
Yeah, it's a book on how not to treat children, that's for sure.
That's for sure. That's for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
I do just want to share one quick piece of information in case you have an opportunity to do any donations. You know, I've worked with kids, ran programs with kids who are in foster care on whatever continuum, adoptions, independent living, et cetera. And we had lots and lots of runaways. When I ran a program for young adults, we would have about 100 kids at any one time from ages 15 all the way up to 18. And, you know, running away was real common. So in the book, one of the reasons she cites for children running away are the Black girls who can't get appropriate hair care products. You know, they say they run away for those reasons, because, you know, as a teenager, you want to look cute or whatever, and you can't, they're making you wash your hair every day. You know, they're not listening to you, whatever. So years and years ago, I wrote a grant and brought in some beauticians to help white parents who had adopted Black children learn how to style and care for their hair. And we had funding for it. They left with products. They left with lists of resources. And it's my understanding that similar programs are still going on. So if you have an opportunity to donate hair care products, if it's your church or in one of your organizations, to go to group homes, you know, please do that. It may sound like a minor thing, but you can imagine being in a group home where they're making you use ivory soap and you don't have, you know, dry your skin out and trying to make you wash your hair every day. And so I think there's been a bit more training about that. And whenever I would see children who had not been cared for that way, it would just hurt my heart. There's one little boy, you know, his nose all caked up, he's just ashy, his hair is all balled up. It used to just hurt my heart. So I would always try to do what I could. And I think as African Americans, we do have a kind of a deep connection with our kids that way. If they're not taken care of, if they're going around, you know, without, you know, enough moisture and whatever, it has an additional meaning for us. Like they're not being cared for, seen as, you know, a person kind of thing. So just wanted to add that. Any other closing remarks about the book?
I want a true confession too. I have not read this book, but I wanted to hear the content. I wanted to hear your discussion. This was at least where I started Black girls in college, so Black students. The fact that they're not faring well, and that this there was a study, I guess. I don't know the origins of it, but there is a statement that continues that African American women are the most educated group in America. Okay. The upside of that is, yay, us. The downside of that is the focus on educating Black females is disintegrating. And so the data, again, at our school is that it was only about 8% graduation rate. And this is data that is known, and it had gone down over a 5-year period to 2%. And so the focus was not on Black females, it was on at least African-American males, so that was good. But we had switched out the white male, white female, Asian male, Asian female, Black female, Hispanic female, Hispanic male, Black male, that order. Now Black women or Black girls were right after, were at the bottom. They flipped to the bottom instead of being at the top of the persons of color, students of color. They were at the height of the students of color. They had dropped to the bottom, and no one was paying attention because all of this vitriol was out there about how well Black students were doing. So anyway, that was 5 years ago. And so my dissertation got changed because there wasn't enough data. But what we found just this last 2 weeks was that 50-50 piece that said African-American students are just as likely to succeed as they are to fail. So if they come with the ability, they're fine. But if they don't come with the ability, there's nothing there to, at least that's what we're thinking, there to help them. So now we're doing studies to find out. So anywho, I just wanted to hear what was being said about Black girls, Black women, again, because it definitely, as you say, is my heart. That's where I want to help. I want to help everybody, but I absolutely want to help Black girls and students and women. So.
Unless someone else has something else they'd like to share. Okay. If not, thank you all so much for participating in this book club.
Thank you.
It was so
And-
Good to see you, Miss
Carla.
Verna.
Oh, forget to see Carla. Yay. I mean, everyone else.
love you.
No.
Judy, were you
Good to
at
see you all.
American Express? Judy?
No.
No, okay, must have been another Judy. Okay, all right, I'm done.
So
You should
we,
just say hello to your boo for me, Carla.
I will. You do
Even though
the
he treats
same.
me, yeah, even though he treats me so terribly, you just say hello to him anyway.
we try to have these,
Huh?
I'm trying to talk in between Carla and Verna.
I'm sorry.
Right. You guys were having fun too, right?
Yeah.
Bye, ladies. Have a great rest of your week.
Good
Wait.
choice.
Oh, wait. Okay.
At the end and say something. It was,
Okay.
I try to have these book discussions probably quarterly. So please look out for the next one and, let your friends know. And if you have, friends from other cultures, part of the reason why I do these is to, expose people to information like we've been discussing. So that's all I wanted to say. And thank you so much. And glad that Verna and Carla got a chance to have a little socialize in over the Zoom.
Well, I
All
enjoyed the
right, so
book.
have a
Good-
great.
Yeah, good choice.
Yeah,
Great.
I will
Thank
read it.
you.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.